Hello. This is going to be a challenge to do this in 20 minutes, but I'm going to try, and I believe I'm going to be able to do it. Don't be surprised if I skip over some of the material, some of the slides. The first thing I want to start showing you is the balance sheet of the Swiss National Bank at the end of the first quarter of 2015. I haven't been able to get the numbers for this year in that format, but the situation has gotten worse. So what we see here is that 18% of the balance sheet of the SNB is formed of equities, and that the Swiss National Bank has monetized close to 1.2 billion Swiss francs of Apple equity alone. So that's the numbers for the SNB. Obviously, they're among the only central banks who disclose such numbers. You can imagine what the numbers are at the Fed or the Bank of Japan. If you're an entrepreneur, you wish to innovate and you wish to compete with Facebook or Apple, you should know you're competing with the world's central banks as well. So just a last word on this current environment. There's a systemic war on truth going on. We are in the era of too big to fail, too big to jail. Your competitors, as an entrepreneur, are paid to borrow money. They borrow money at negative interest rates and buy back their stocks. Obviously, there's a systemic monetization of all paper assets going on. We say we are in a free market economy, but there's a Politburo which manipulates interest rates. The commissars call themselves central bankers, but that's basically what it is. And we are obviously in an epic equity bubble. So as an entrepreneur, this is absolutely not a reason to be discouraged, because when there are inefficiencies, there are opportunities for arbitrage. And I believe our generation is presented with the opportunity of a century. There are so many inefficiencies, and on the other hand, so many capabilities that the digital age offers that I believe never there has been a better time to innovate, to create, and make a positive impact on the world. And this is what I'm going to try to convince you of in the 18 minutes I have left. So the first thing I want to try to do is to define hacker. What is a hacker? Long story short, if you've ever used a coffee machine to make tea, you're a hacker. A hacker is someone who understands the context of the problem he's working on, understands what are the artificial barriers that exist in that context, and try to circumvent them in the best way possible. So that's basically an entrepreneur we're talking about, and hopefully this will become clearer as I move on along the presentation. So the first question I want to try to answer is, what will we make of this information age? We are talking about making the world a better place, having an impact. Where is this world leading to? Where is the digital age leading humanity? I'm not sure of the answer, but I'm going to try to give you an answer to this question. Are we going towards a society of Big Brother, with technology being used to abuse, to track, to tax, to surveil, and to monitor? Or are we going towards an era of newfound freedom? That's obviously a very relevant question, especially since the way technology is used to monitor and track and surveil has gotten so much attention lately. Everyone can feel the tension, obviously. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but you have the state on one hand using everything it can, and technology in particular, to oppress and to basically remove us from our natural freedoms. And on the other hand, you have this resistance that is growing on the internet, and which is crystallized through different ideologies, different movements, etc. Whatever side you take, it's undeniable that there's a tension. And so the question I'm trying to answer, what will we make of the information age, requires first to understand what the internet is made of. It's important to realize that the internet is not a hierarchical, thought-through, organized backbone. The internet is a heuristic and dynamic conglomeration of voluntary peering agreements. So Bob and Alice want to exchange data with one another. They co-finance a line, a communication line. And then you have Charlie that connects in the same way to Alice. If Bob and Charlie want to communicate with one another, they go through Alice. And this is the internet. It is really an amalgamation of voluntary bilateral peering agreements. That's why it's so resilient. That's why it's so difficult to censor it or to block it, because it is completely distributed. And nobody saw the internet coming. Even Tim Berners-Lee, who first described the HTTP protocol, never has and could never have envisioned what the web and the internet would become today. When I was a kid, we would speak about a 21st century made of flying cars and domestic robots. Nobody saw the internet coming, and that's because it wasn't a planned invention. Nobody planned it along the way. Big government played a role at CERN, at DARPA, but it has taken a life of its own because of its distributed nature. So the internet itself is the unplanned and formidable product of free, unilateral, individual human action. That's a first part of the answer. I guess you're starting to understand where I'm going, but this is an important point. Another important point is to notice what happened around 2003. I call it a singularity, the divergence between editing and formatting. What this means is that from 2003 onwards, you didn't need to know anymore how to format content in order to share it with the world. Before 2003, if you had a video or some content or an idea, an article you wanted to publish, you needed to know how to format it in HTML. It was a complex task, or a relatively complex task, to share it with the world. In 2003, YouTube, blogs, Wikipedia, Web 2.0 platforms were born, and now you don't need any technical skill whatsoever to share your ideas, share your content with the world. So the internet is a free market of ideas. Obviously, it is an exchange system for information, which has a very low barrier of entry, and which allows to trade an asset in a completely free way. So as happens with any free markets, obviously, the asset being exchanged is bound to increase exponentially in terms of objective quality. So to define the internet, I think the best formulation is that the internet is a distributed invention, distributed because of what I said before, distributed invention that dramatically decreases the cost of producing and delivering ideas. Because the raw material necessary to produce a new idea are other ideas, and because these other ideas are much cheaper to access, obviously it's much cheaper to produce new ideas. And there are only two historical precedents: writing, which allowed the emergence of civilization, and the printing press, which allowed us to free ourselves from the political tyranny of the time, namely the Roman Catholic Church. I recommend, The Economist is not necessarily my preferred source of information, but this article in particular is very good, and they explain how researchers have understood that Luther's pamphlets spread in a very, very similar way to the way viral articles or videos spread on the internet nowadays. The mathematical function of propagation is extremely, extremely similar. Obviously, on the internet it happens faster, but the model, the concept, the abstract way it happens is pretty much the same. So let's try to prove these assertions. If the internet works as a free market of ideas, and if it empowers the emergence of better ideas, then the best informational goods should be the ones that leverage the internet the most. Can we think of informational goods? One example is operating systems. The operating system is the software that underlies every computing platform. It is a very complex piece of software. Nobody saw it coming, but Linux, the open source, and its cousin FreeBSD, open source operating system, which is developed by a huge set of people distributed in the world, which work together in a pretty heuristic manner, basically equips today 90% of smartphones and tablets and more than 60% of all servers. Nobody would have said this was likely in the 90s, when Microsoft reigned supreme in the world of operating systems. Nowadays, Microsoft is being ridiculed day after day by this free open source software that is developed by people who have as ambition the only wish to do a good work and to contribute to the world in a unilateral way. Another example of informational good is an encyclopedia. Think about this. Wikipedia is barely 10 years old. It exists in 180, I think even the threshold of 200 languages was crossed, but let's say 180 languages. It is statistically as relevant as Britannica, which has existed for 2.5 centuries and which has just in English 10 times less articles. Plus, the average article in Wikipedia is longer. So in 10 years, we've been able to do humanity in a distributed way, because every person is free to individually and unilaterally contribute to this encyclopedia, a better job than the best of the luminaries and intellectuals in 2.5 centuries, which is absolutely amazing, and this cannot be understated. So there's a very popular saying among Wikipedia editors is that Wikipedia only works in practice, it doesn't work in theory. This is not a joke. This is the associate of Jimmy Wales who says this, and this is a popular saying. Only works in practice, not in theory. Might mean that there's something wrong with the theory, obviously, the theory of central planning and the idea that wealth and innovation is best produced by an organized, centralized elite, pushing it down to the masses. This is simply not true. Nature doesn't work like this. Nature is profoundly, eminently decentralized. So what? Hackers helped build the foundations of the internet. Humanity gets a free market of ideas. Intangible assets improve in quality. Does it stop there? I still haven't proven that we are going towards a better world thanks to the internet and the digital age. So let me give you very concrete examples. In addition to having a better encyclopedia and better operating systems, how this is likely to shape our society in the future. First of all, anachronisms. 20th century laws are becoming null and void. And in order to understand this, it's important to understand that the digital age means that everything has become a number, a digit, especially intangible goods. A movie is a number, an idea is a number, a blog article is a number, everything is a number. And with 3D printing, with open source hardware, even tangible goods are becoming numbers. So if you want to suppress the flow of information, the flow of ideas, if you want to suppress innovation, you need to control the pronunciation of numbers. And this is absolutely impossible to do. It is technically unfeasible. Even the Chinese have not been able to do it and are not able to do it. Their big firewall is failing. So let's say we try to ban some numbers. What about that number, illegal number -1? Is it still illegal? Is there a list of illegal numbers? What about the square of that number? Is 42 illegal? Because some person might interpret it in some way. It's impossible to do. It's impossible to ban numbers. Therefore, it's impossible to ban ideas. And so other crimes of opinion, defamation, dissent, revisionism, are becoming impossible to prosecute. And things like copyright, censorship, propaganda are becoming increasingly meaningless. So some people may say this is not good, that we are not able to prosecute opinions anymore. I happen to say it's a good thing. The reality is that it's a fact. It's harder and harder to prosecute ideas, harder and harder to control the dissemination of wealth, of innovation, because that would mean controlling the utterance, the pronunciation of numbers. Flow of goods. As you know, the end goal of civilization is complete transparency for institutions and complete privacy for individuals. A savage has no privacy. Civilization provides privacy. We have privacy because we organize in such a way to enjoy privacy. And obviously, the internet allows for anonymity and privacy to thrive for whoever knows how to use the tools, and it's becoming increasingly easy to do so. So artificial barriers such as taxation, which hamper innovation, hamper growth, hamper creation, entrepreneurship, are more easily ignored because anonymity represents a very strong enforcement obstacle. As an entrepreneur, nothing can prevent me today from recruiting someone in India, paying him in whatever cryptocurrency I wish, and not disclosing that fact. I don't even need a legal structure anymore. I can publish my service on the darknet, recruit developers wherever they are found in the world, have them compete with one another so that I'm able to hire the best of them all. It's harder and harder for the powers that be to prevent me from doing that and from creating whatever I want to create. And then, obviously, separation of money and state, the big challenge of our generation. Hayek, if he were alive today, you know, he wrote the book, The Denationalization of Money, would absolutely love presentations like this because so many people are coming here and talking about how money and state will soon be split, just like church and state were split a couple of generations ago. So there's a global oligarch, I forget his name, who said, "Give me control of a nation's money and I care not who makes its laws." I love this because this was meant to say, I need to control the central bank and then I'm above the law. Well, it can be seen the other way around. Give the people control of the money system and they won't be bothered by the repression anymore and by the political violence being waged against them. So this is the challenge of our generation. This is a very important milestone in the advancement of civilization to remove the state monopoly over money. And Bitcoin is a very important stepping stone in that direction. So Bitcoin, as you know, is a freely tradable, anonymous, decentralized, distributed cryptocurrency. So how will hackers help bring in this new world? Data leaks, strong cryptography, connection relays, political mobilization, etc., etc. Just by developing on the Linux kernel or contributing to Wikipedia, the impact is very high. So the answer is, and hopefully I've been able to convince you, the Big Brother society is not going to come along. It's the goal of the people who govern us, but it will fail. Because every time humanity comes up with the means to reduce the propagation of ideas, well, it means the advent of a new era of liberty and prosperity. So to get back to the points, I have argued for the past 15 minutes that there are all these barriers that exist to innovation, which entrepreneurs are increasingly discarding thanks to the internet. Whenever there's an inefficiency, if you find the way to circumvent the inefficiency, you have a way to prosper and to make the life of humanity better. So they can solicit the online crowd, develop disruptive propositions, destroy established monopolies, free people from the creeping tyranny, and assist individuals to opt out. So let me now give you very specific and concrete examples. I have 6 examples, from the least controversial to the most controversial, of how, if you're an aspiring entrepreneur or investor, you can create wealth, innovate, and make the world a better place by circumventing the artificial and immoral obstacles that exist in the world today. So first category, first example, is how the internet and entrepreneurs online can bypass anachronistic distribution models. And let me give you, there are plenty of examples, but just one example, the one of Dollar Shave Club company. You know, the world leader in razors and shaving gear for men is undoubtedly Gillette and Procter & Gamble. What makes their operations valuable is not necessarily the IP, not necessarily the way you build a razor with 12 blades or whatever, but the distribution network they have, the contracts they have with Walmart, with Kmart, with every single distributor in the world, pretty much. So Dollar Shave Club is a bunch of guys who made a website and said, okay, subscribe to our website, pay $1 per week, and we will send you a super razor and razor blades by post on a regular basis. That's it. No distribution infrastructure, nothing. A bit of marketing. they had to build the actual razor, which is not that complicated. And now in the US, they have 15% of market share for razors. And they have no trucks, no warehouse, no contract with Walmart. And it's an absolute hell for Procter & Gamble and Gillette. It's a tremendous problem for them. They don't know how to deal with that because on one hand, they don't want to alienate their partners, the distributors, and on the other hand, they understand that they need to compete, that the way they're distributing their product today doesn't make sense anymore. So that's one example. There are plenty others. SoundCloud in the music business, but let's move on. The second area of change, of innovation, is how entrepreneurs now are increasingly able to circumvent regulation-enabled oligopolies. The fact that Uber is pissing off taxi men so much is the proof that they're doing a good job and making the world a better place. In order to be a taxi driver, you need to pay so many taxes and ascribe to so many regulations. It's so complex, it doesn't make any sense just to allow someone who needs a car to meet someone who has a car, to have all this structure of violence atop such a simple business proposition doesn't make sense. So Uber is doing a great job. If they want to try to ban Uber, the next app will be on the darknet, will use cryptography, and they will not cooperate with the power structure, and it will work even better. Airbnb, same thing in the hotel world and the lodging and accommodation world. So all these regulations have allowed businesses to thrive. Hotels, chains, or monopolistic taxi systems, and now we come with an app and everything falls apart, which is great. Cryptography. Open source cryptography defeats the world's supercomputers. That's amazing. NSA has not been spying on us since Edward Snowden. This has been going on at least since the end of the Second World War. Everyone has heard of Echelon. Even here in Switzerland, we have the antennas in Zimmerwald to listen to the satellites and to intercept calls and everything. We have our own system, but it's the same kind of system. With very simple cryptography, you can bypass all that. Edward Snowden says we are able to turn the internet dark for the NSA, for the spying powers. And so because in Switzerland we have relatively more freedom in that regard, there are no restrictions to export cryptography, unlike other developed nations. You have businesses that have set up shop here and are thriving on that business proposition. And because of the Edward Snowden scandal, the competitive factor of privacy is more and more important. Tomorrow, a Facebook that guarantees it respects privacy has a competitive advantage because there is a demand from customers for such a value, given everything that's been in the news. So Voila was a fork of the ETH. I believe it was discontinued now or taken another form, but the idea is zero-knowledge online storage. You upload your data on the cloud. It is encrypted using strong cryptography, and nobody can open it, especially the provider. The data center, the people who provide the service cannot open your data because they have no knowledge that allows them to open your file. So basically, if you lose your password, they're unable to reset it for you. So that's the only downside. You need to remember your password, not lose it, or you will lose everything. But let's say you have a political intervention, using the police come into your premises and seizing everything in the office. Well, you have nothing there, everything is online, you've forgotten the password, nothing can be grabbed, nothing can be seized. You're completely free from that kind of violence, which has existed for generations. ProtonMail is great. They suffered a distributed denial of service attack, a hacking attack, probably state-sponsored, because they're a small Swiss email company that does the same thing. It has tremendous success worldwide. It's a Gmail, basically, with strong cryptography, Swiss-based. So not even the NSA, unless they have quantum computers, but I very much doubt it, even the NSA cannot access your emails if you use ProtonMail, which is great. I mean, a couple of developers do something, put it online, it changes the world like this. You don't need to change the law about monitoring and privacy. Just build a platform like ProtonMail, and the problem is solved. Just disregard the law. Censorship and surveillance, same thing. Many systems on the internet allow people to evade censorship and surveillance. It's completely uncontroversial if you provide this for people in Syria or Yemen or China. A bit more controversial if you do it in the West, but nonetheless useful, nonetheless relevant. And because this has value for the people who use it, they're willing to pay for it. And a lot of money can be earned by doing that. So you earn money by protecting people. It makes the world a better place because they are able to evade the violence being directed against them. Area number 5, money power. I already talked about the separation of money and state. And in the Bitcoin ecosystem, there are a lot of ideas, projects going on that allow making Bitcoin easier to adopt. Bitcoin is extremely competitive because not only because it's decentralized and there's no central bank, no central planning, but also because it's much easier to make a payment across the world, which cannot be reversed and which is secure. So it has a real competitive edge to it, not only an ideological side to it, also a business competitive edge to it. And the companies that gravitate around Bitcoin and allow people to adopt Bitcoin are also creating a lot of wealth for themselves and helping their fellow humans. And then the 6th area of innovation, perhaps a bit more controversial, is that you are now able from your couch to join the resistance. Defense Distributed, this is the first logo, an amazing guy called Cody Wilson. Look him up, he has amazing interviews explaining everything I'm saying here much better. He's the guy who invented the 3D printed gun, and so he built basically a description of a 3D description of a gun that you can print at home with your 3D printer. And the second, and other things. Dark wallet is also his idea, his creation. And then the second image is that of an EMP gun, which is an evolution of the RFID zapper, which was developed by one of the most famous hacking groups in the world, the Chaos Computer Club, modified a small disposable camera to fry RFID chips in passports. So you modify your little camera, fry your RFID chip, and it becomes impossible to track you using biometrics and these passports, this kind of technology. That's it. Thank you very much. I rushed a bit through the presentation. If you have questions, I'll be here for the rest of the evening. Thank you.